So thank you everyone for joining us today for our 8th and final session of CEC 15's Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion series. I'm Camille Casaretti, the president of Brooklyn District's 15 Community Education Council, and I'm excited to be hosting the series of 8 info sessions that were designed to allow opportunities for school community members and incoming families to learn about the very important work we're doing in District 15 to desegregate our schools. This is just a small part of a much larger collaboration between the Department of Education, CEC 15, and our school community members. The pandemic has caused serious harm to so many, and coupled with social inequalities that have been brought to the surface, it seemed necessary to help people understand what diversity, equity, and inclusion really mean. The DEI series is a starting off point, a beginning of sorts, a place where people can learn about how to make impactful changes in their school communities, within their families, and in their personal life. We all have the strength to be leaders in this work. Find your strength. Videos of these sessions can be found on the cec15.org website under the DEI tab. I will drop that into the chat. If you set aside some time to listen to these sessions, you'll learn about early childhood development, the influence of parents, teachers, and first friendships, about social emotional learning and inclusive classrooms. We discuss cultural diversity and how our differences actually bring us closer together, learning from each other and about each other, hearing each other's stories. That's what will shape our young people and give them the foundation that they need to succeed as citizens of this world. Understanding other cultures helps us to overcome and prevent racial and ethnic divisions while building love and understanding. In some sessions, we talk about special education, appropriate settings, and cooperative learning, because diversity isn't limited to just race and socioeconomics, and inclusion is entirely different from integration. As adults and as parents, it's our role to guide our children and often each other toward an equitable society, one where people are committed, generous, and perform heroic actions as part of their everyday life, not just as a reaction to a crisis. I ask you to find ways to empower yourself and others and find the willingness and desire for change that can make a lasting impact on equity for all of our students. In District 15, we see this work as a moral imperative, and we want to learn and grow together. Again, I want to thank you for setting time aside for today's session, which will focus on school choice lotteries and their impact on education. Some people might say that implementing these types of policies is a progressive action to take. I would ask you, at what point in our society did doing something fair and equitable become progressive? We have a lot of fantastic speakers here with us today to share stories about fair and equitable admission policies, ones that will build and offer opportunities where they didn't previously exist. Our first speaker is Matt Gonzalez. Matt is an educator, an advocate, and a policy analyst. He's the founder and director of the Integration and Innovation Initiative at NYU's Metro Center, a project designed to support policy development and design, implementation, and advocacy for school integration. He's also the co-founder of the NYC Alliance for School Integration and Desegregation, and serves as the policy coach for the youth-led advocacy group Integrate NYC. As a member of Mayor Bill de Blasio's Student Advisory Group, Matt helped craft New York City's policy on school integration and was integral in helping draft a common definition for culturally responsive and sustaining education. He has worked closely with state education leaders to design the New York State Integration Project grant program and has supported districts all across New York in developing integration plans. Nationally, Matt serves on the Policy Working Group and Steering Committee for the National Coalition on School Diversity and is an advisory board member for Integrated Schools, a grassroots parent network committed to integrating schools. Matt Gonzalez, it's our pleasure to have you here with us today.
Yeah, hey, thank you. Thanks everybody. Yeah, sorry about that ridiculously like long list of things, which I think just indicates I probably need to like do less in my life. Anyways, yeah, thank you everyone for inviting me to be here, Camille and the CEC. It's just really exciting to see all the work that you all have been doing. As Camille noted, like I've had the pleasure to work with District 15 and districts all across the city for a number of years, really thinking about supporting integration and what that looks like, what that means. And I'm really just happy to see the progress and the work that's happened in this district. And so I was asked to come quickly talk a little bit about the School Diversity Advisory Group and the way kind of the role that that plays in some of the local efforts that you all have been really, at the forefront of, along with the number of other districts. I know folks that are represented here today too. So I'll talk a little bit about that and then I'll pass. I see a bunch of my colleagues and friends on this call that I'm excited to be quiet and listen to as well. So I'll just give you some quick background on the School Diversity Advisory Group, which seems like all of this happened in another era, in another lifetime, but it was like really just a few years back. So in 2017, really after really a lot of pressure and advocacy on Mayor Bill de Blasio and the current Chancellor Carmen Farina at the time, youth were getting involved. Parent leaders had been really driving the conversation of integration for a very long time, and there were a number of priorities and efforts pushing the city to do something about the very kind of ridiculous segregation that we had across New York City public schools. And so as a response, and I think what folks can see as like a way to like really buy time and not do anything necessarily significant, the mayor at the time convened and the chancellor convened what's now known as the School Diversity Advisory Group, which consisted of about 45 individuals who were representing 45 plus different community-based organizations, advocacy groups, and other kind of service providers who had a kind of stake and an impact and a concern about what the impact of segregation was looking like. That group included young people. It included parent leaders, elected parent leaders, advocacy parent leaders. It included educators, researchers, policy nerds like myself, and a whole range of other folks who were really thinking about this issue. And so we met in 2017 in December. Now I'm just looking at my notes. So like, a long time ago, really, in the span of the policy that's changed over time, and also just like thinking about that was again under Chancellor Carmen Farina, and the dialogue at that time was much different than under the current Chancellor Carranza. And so after about 2 years of work, we researched, we held 8 public town halls over the course of 2 years, 2 student-centered town halls. We collected tremendous amounts of feedback, had lots of debates and arguments, and collectively produced what is now known as the School Diversity Advisory Group reports. They were broken into 2 reports that consist of about 90 policies. I'm not going to read all the policies. I will happily share resources and links for you all to check them all out, but I will give you like the broad strokes of what those policies represented. And so report 1 was released in February of last year. This articulated 67 policies that were really focused on setting the conditions for what we mean when we say integration. Camille alluded to this idea that inclusion and integration are not the same thing. Desegregation and integration are not the same thing. So what we were thinking about is like, what does it actually take to create a truly inclusive and integrated environment? And really thinking, really grounding our work in the work of Integrate NYC students whose framework, the 5 R's of real integration, has really shaped the District 15 middle school diversity plan, but also the citywide policy on integration. So we took that 5 R's framework, similar to the way the middle school working group kind of used that framework and broke it into a variety of policies. And so we took that policy framework and broke it into, what is now 90 plus different policies. And so the first set of policies, of which 62 were implemented out of the 67 we offered, really laid out policies focusing on culturally responsive education, teacher diversity, restorative practices, thinking really about school climate and cultural practices. So it laid out this big framework of, and really an invitation for a conversation of what does integration mean inside of our schools in reality, beyond just moving bodies. However, we also set goals to suggest that we cannot just maintain the structural segregation that was built into and designed and engineered into our system. And so we articulated goals that said every single district in this city needs to be working to achieve diverse representation of students within each school that reflects the diversity of the district. And again, looking at District 15 middle schools at the admissions policy as a model, that the goal is for every district to serve the need and serve the diversity of, sorry, every school to serve the diversity of the district. And so what we had and what we have today are schools that basically get to pick and choose who they want to serve. And then we get to compare these schools to schools that have to and like honorably serve every young person. And so the idea was to really acknowledge that we need districts to start doing active work towards representation inside of every school and serving every single kid inside every school. So that's report one. The mayor and the chancellor, this was under Chancellor Carranza now, approved 62 of those recommendations, including those goals, including a bunch of policies that, again, I think folks need to think about our leverage points for you pushing at the local level. I mean, then our second report basically offered the teeth to like achieve those goals that we laid out in the first report. And so we identified that programs historically, currently, and like will continue to like gifted and talented, like the use of discriminatory admissions policies like screens, like other high school admissions policies that exclude particularly marginalized community members and young people were unacceptable in a public system, and we're only going to work against us achieving integration. We laid out those about 30 plus policy recommendations. The city, that was August of last year. The city has basically been silent on that. They were quite controversial. Nothing has really happened. I'll say that there is a framework and a foundation of really good policy that is really community driven and designed to kind of move the conditions towards desegregated communities. In terms of the system-wide policy that we wanted to see the city take, it's not getting done, and we don't necessarily, I don't have faith that it will get done, but that doesn't mean that the district 15, I think this district is representative of when the city's leadership fails, the local leadership actually can take the movement forward. And so what I wanted to do was lay out that context. I'll stop talking and just really give you all gratitude and appreciation for hearing and listening and being here.
Thank you so much, Matt. It's so great to have you here, and thank you for all of this incredible work you've been doing. Our next speaker is District 15 Superintendent Anita Skopp, who served as the Community Superintendent for District 15 in Brooklyn for the past 10 years and has been an educator in the New York City school system for the past 35. Anita's worked in a wide range of educational settings, having held teaching and leadership positions in early childhood, elementary, and middle school educational programs. It's my great pleasure and honor to work with her so closely. She is truly one of the greatest leaders and supporters of equity of our time. Anita?
Thank you, everybody. And it is a delight to be here today and talk about our work. Matt, you honor our district with your words, and we're trying so very hard to live up to those expectations. And with that, I am going to use my little bit of time to share with you, for those of you who did not know, that we had been awarded the state integration grant, and we're very proud of that. And we are using that, as you will see in a moment, to support continuous work on integration across the district in all facets of the work. So we have to apportion the money. And so this is, Zaida, if you can put up my little one pager, I'd appreciate it. It's actually 3 pages, but it's big. So you can see people that we put into our budget. This is moddable, which means we can change things as we go along to meet needs. But there are certain things that we have put in that we want to ensure become a legacy for District 15. And one of the things that we want to ensure becomes a legacy for District 15 is our work on rezoning. And as you have heard in previous meetings, District 15 is doing a very unique rezoning effort in that we are rezoning 7 schools in what is called Subdistrict 3. but we are rezoning them through the lens of integration. It's the first time this has ever been done. Kudos to the Department of Enrollment for encouraging this and for supporting this and taking this. But as with this kind of work, we had numerous meetings. But what we discovered is what we, in many cases, knew, in that the meetings were oftentimes with the loudest voices in the room and the people who felt enfranchised to come to the meetings. And so we wanted to make a very strong effort to hear from all voices and to make sure those who felt disenfranchised had their voices heard. And one of the things that was suggested that we pursued was called the PAR process, which is participatory action research. And the basic contribution that we made as a district to this is working with the Office of Enrollment. We created a way to fund this. And we used the money from our grant, from the first year of our grant, so that we were able to make this happen. And it's very simple the way it works. Members of the community are paid a small stipend. They come together as a group, they are trained, and then they go out into the community and they do research and talk to people, just talk to people. They also created a survey. Maddie will talk more about all of this. But by funding this, we want to ensure that in District 15, this is the way all rezoning works. So we have set aside monies for our grant, from our grant, for the participatory action research project to continue over the course of the grant, which is the next 3 years. In addition to that, we had done work with WXY, and so as you can see here, we're using consultants from CUNY as PAR outreach. We're also going to be doing work with WXY to do monthly working group sessions and to facilitate community forums. I also have in mind that I would like them to work with our middle schools, because I would like them to help. They do a very good job of putting together polished materials to help put together protocols and virtual videos so that the schools themselves can advertise themselves in a meaningful way. And this is also an equity issue. We want to make sure that everybody is given the same thing. We have been working with and will continue to work with the Minor Collective, that's Cornelius Minor and his wife, Cass. And these will be looking at teaching using culturally responsive materials and literature. This is extraordinarily important because we want our children to feel pride in who they are and connected to what they read about. I often talk about the fact that we don't want our children learning what we call the Disney version of history. We want real history, honest history, but we also want kids to see themselves in the books they read, to understand the contribution that their families and ancestors and other communities have made, so that they don't believe that it is just a whitewashed version, and they can see that we have truly been built as a nation, literally on the backs of many different groups of people, some voluntary and some less than voluntary. And that while we have great ideals on paper, we have a lot to do before we can say we live up to them. We are going to be working with what is called Mrs. Sam's Education Consultants to develop advisory curricula and opportunities for expanding social emotional learning in school for students, so that there is that connection and that there is that voice. We are working with the Center for Supportive Schools Educational Consultants, again, creating emotionally safe environments that ensure that all students and families feel welcome and appreciated for the diverse perspectives they bring to school. We are working with Yale Center for Emotional Intelligence using the Ruler protocol and continuing to train Ruler, and we're specifically targeting certain schools, looking at disproportionality, because this is ownership and training for students on how to deal with their emotions, and it aligns magnificently with restorative practices, not putting disciplinary actions in place, but training children to understand their feelings, have the vocabulary to express themselves, and use their voice to handle how they feel. We are going to be working with Karen Mapp from Scholastic Lit Life. Those of you who know, Karen Mapp is a famous organizer out of Harvard University. She has going to do parent-facing workshops that will inform an action plan to sustain student success. She is famous for talking about, much as the PAR process does, how do you reach parents who themselves have been disenfranchised and who feel that they are uncomfortable or that there is no place for them within a school system. Again, working with the Minor Collective around key issues towards the diverse school environment. They have worked with us on our equity Congress, and we are going to continue to do that and expand the sharing of perspective and experiences. One of the things that we are doing is we are enabled to give money to schools for translation materials, and we are targeting specifically our CSI, TSI schools, but we can mod money for more to other schools should they need them. Many of our schools have already undertaken this, to hire interpreters for parent and community meetings. We are working with Metamorphosis, and I have to give a shout out to Kelly, who arranged this partnership to look at math learning, especially with a lens towards equity, inclusion, and integration. We often talk about the achievement gap and we focus on literacy, which is very near and dear to my heart, but we often forget that math is also an achievement gap. And this is an opportunity for our children to really grow as mathematicians. One of the things that we are also looking at, this is not a complete list, there is more, but I'm giving you the gist of it, is something that is a very exciting partnership with 3D Bear, which is a learning academy from Finland. And the goal is to help teachers understand how to customize content, deliver lessons in a way that utilizes student voice and raises the level of rigor in a way that is engaging and encourages students to engage. And we have had a pilot with this and it was just overwhelmingly spectacular. So we want to expand it, and the goal is to make District 15 a model district for using augmented reality in the education world. There are more things we are going to do. We are going to provide libraries. We are going to provide supports. I'm going to meet with a lady, I forget her last name, but she is Lieutenant Colonel Consuelo, who is an amazing parent outreach person, and we're going to add her to the list. So this is about working with our schools, continuing to look at integration, continuing to support equity from all the different angles: parents, teachers, students, materials, and the actual day-to-day work. One of the things that WXY is going to do is continue to monitor the work that we have done that aligns to the diversity plan. And so these are things that will keep us on it and will be our legacy in District 15. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Anita. Your ability is really boundless, and your vision. Thank you so much for everything that you're doing for District 15, our students, families, and you're just a true inspiration to all of us. So thank you for that. Our next guest is Anne McGroarty, who works in the Office of District Planning. The office is responsive to the changing needs of communities throughout the city, and we work with Anne and Max Vermillion from the Office of District Planning. They support schools by addressing school size and sustainability. opening and siting new schools, reconfiguring existing schools, and identifying programmatic needs. Anne is here today with our newest District 15 partner, Maddie Fox. Maddie is the assistant professor of children and youth studies and sociology at Brooklyn College. And he's been working closely with the DOE and District 15 on a participatory action research project that is elevating the voices of school community members that have traditionally been underrepresented. So Anne and Maddie, thank you so much for joining us today. Really excited to hear what you have to say.
Thanks. Thank you so much, Camille. And can everyone hear me okay? Because I'm having spotty Wi-Fi issues with all of my remote children learning. Just want to thank everyone. I see a lot of familiar faces on the call, so it's nice to see everyone who is, part of the sort of pushing integration forward. I just, actually Anita spoke a lot to what was going on in terms of the beginning of this rezoning that we are undertaking in subzone 3. The initial sort of spur of the rezoning had to do with a new capacity that was a new building that was opening in one of the schools, that's PS 32. So as you know, they have got a brand new annex or addition this year. So that was, usually that's one of the big catalysts of a rezoning is a new building or new construction. So combined with that and looking into the fact that there are some severely overcrowded schools in the district, the Office of District Planning before my time started to engage on a rezoning proposal. Before they even submitted proposals, they engaged the community in the spring of 2019, I believe. And they heard a lot of feedback, including a commitment to integration, the need to address overcrowding, and a desire to maintain zones. But I think what was lacking and what we heard from folks was that there was not really a meaningful engagement, as Anita said, and that these community meetings were really focused on sort of these town halls, and they weren't actually gathering enough feedback from everybody who is going to be impacted by this rezoning. I think there was also a lot of points, and to Matt always makes this point about the moving bodies, that the Office of District Planning was sort of engaged in a desegregation effort, but really wasn't thinking about what true integration meant, and that the moving of bodies is just not going to be enough to actually have true integration. So I think, the PAR project was really a way of sort of addressing this. Participatory action research is very new to the DOE. I don't think there's ever been a true participatory action research project ever done. So I just wanted to sort of emphasize that this is all new territory, and we're figuring out as we go along. Maddie has been a great thought partner, and it's become like a true sort of collaboration in a way I don't think we even ever thought possible. And so that's really great. And she's pushing our thinking, and where our thinking is, we're pushing, the higher ups thinking. And so we're really trying to push a different frame and a different way of looking at a rezoning, which might make some people uncomfortable, but I think it's great. And I don't know if I have anything else to say. I really just want to kick it to Maddie and kind of, elevate what the PAR team's been doing, because they're awesome. And that's it.
Thanks, Anne. So yeah, the PAR team, who we spent the morning with this morning, Anne and I, is a group of community members from across the communities that are part of Sub-District 3. So the kind of impacted communities, 7 school communities, or communities surrounding the 7 schools. And the team itself is made up of community members, as majority community members who are from historic communities that have been historically underrepresented and kind of left out of educational decision making. So we are a group of parents from across the subzone, family members and parents and community members, and we meet regularly, and the whole kind of approach, the participatory action approach, is that kind of design where those who are impacted by a question, a research question, or an area of inquiry, or an issue or a problem, are the ones themselves who lead an inquiry, and develop kind of action plans and products and interventions or whatever a kind of situation might call for. I think in relation to the discussion we're having today, the piece that the participatory action research process, in this case, in relation to rezoning, the piece that it brings or kind of like introduces into the conversation is about process. So it's not just about a justice goal. So there might be a kind of some sense of a shared goal of kind of integration or integration based on the 5 R's kind of goal, but it also really matters not only it matters kind of who gets to articulate the particulars of that justice goal, and it also really matters how we get there, how we reach a justice goal, how we approach it, and how we reach it, how we claim any kind of justice. And so that part of it, that piece about process is what the participatory action research approach to rezoning really brings. And in our case, in Subdistrict 3, what that meant was that if we think about, we've made a set of recommendations. At this point, we've made kind of initial recommendations, and now we're waiting. The Department of Education and the Office of District Planning are working on figuring out how to like what it means, what might mean to kind of put those recommendations on the ground, and then we'll be making final recommendations. But we did make recommendations around rezoning, but it was also more than just rezoning. So when we stick with the participatory action research approach, then the process really matters, and and when you begin with lived experience, with people's lived experiences, with histories of communities, with perspectives, but also dreams and desires, then the very local context, the very particulars of a set of communities or a series of communities really matters and really informs how the justice goals get articulated. In the case of Subzone 3 of District 15, that has meant that if you looked at the district in the before the PAR process, you would see, a set of quite segregated schools that are quite segregated by race, ethnicity, and there might be an initial kind of, if you look at it just on paper, it might seem like it would be a good idea to just kind of redistribute bodies across. But after a kind of in-depth participatory process where we talked to we had in-depth small group qualitative discussions with more than 75. It's like a low ball number because of how we counted, but like lots and lots and lots of people, at least 75 qualitative kind of in-depth conversations. We also surveyed more than 800 people. We were out at community events. We were building with community groups and community organizers. And through all the discussions, we learned that, it is not necessarily the desire of BIPOC communities in this subzone to travel all over the district, right? People really expressed a strong desire for thriving schools close to home. And so that informs how we might articulate what the justice goal is and how it might how that might shape what rezoning looks like. And in this case, prioritizing access, but also across the district, but also really thinking creatively about what educational equity looks like. And then also another kind of unexpected recommendation that came through the participatory process was one of the schools that was centered in the process because of the participatory approach was PS 676, a school that hasn't had a lot of positive kind of over decades. Over the history of the school has been a site of tension between the neighborhood, the community, and the DOE. And they have come up from within the community of this idea of exploring the idea of transforming into a middle school. So there were some creative ideas that came through the participatory process because of who was involved with it, who was leading it, and most importantly, who the whole project, the whole approach was accountable to. And so I think it really fits well with kind of in a complementary way with what Matt was talking about, with the whole set of recommendations, and it just layers into those recommendations pieces about process. So I'll leave it there. I know we have so many amazing people to hear from today. I love this room. I'm very grateful to be here. Thank you, Camille.
Thank you, Maddie. Thank you, Anne. Yes, you're right. We have an astronomical amount of speakers today. This is by far our most full meeting, and it's fantastic to have you all here. Thank you for sharing all of your stories and information and helping us to really think deeply about things that we can do in our own district and in other districts throughout the city. So thank you for those inspirations. Speaking of inspiring, our next guest is CEC1 President, Naomi Pena. I met Naomi through the CEC, and she has always inspired me to think outside of the box. She is a true leader in our city for advancing equity, and we are so grateful to have you here today, Naomi. Really looking forward to hearing your story.
Thank you for that wonderful introduction. I feel like I have nothing more to say. My name is Naomi Pena. I am actually born and raised in the Lower East Side. I have been on a CEC now. This is going on my third term. I have 4 kids in the public school system. A little bit of what got me involved in this work was when I went on the CEC, they were in the middle of doing their, we were issued a SIP grant, a socioeconomic pilot program that we got through, actually it was through the federal government, and it was awarded to the state, and the state then awarded to DOE, and we applied and we got it. And basically this was back in 2013. We wanted to explore a model that we had in this district from the late 80s, early 90s. School District 1 is very unique in that we are completely 100% unzoned for middle and for elementary school. And during the school board days, what was happening is as different crops of different schools were coming up, our demographics at the time were different. So I have said we are in the middle of a second wave of gentrification, but in the 80s and in the early 90s, those people that came to our neighborhood were the artisans, you know, the Madonnas of the world who wanted to come down here. And many of them actually made this their home. So they were side by side with the neighbors that were born and raised here. They became a fabric of our community. Whenever there was a riot, they were rioting right with us. And what ended up happening is that when these different models of schools started coming up, you know, the sort of the progressive, non-traditional ones, it was showing where a lot more of our white families were pivoting towards those schools. And at the time, the school board president thought to herself that we needed to make this more equitable, and not just based on race, but also based on gender, because there were some classes that were heavily boys or not enough boys or girls. So they came up with a controlled choice model, and it worked successfully for well over a decade. So at the time, they did it by race. This was pre-lawsuit. So they did it by race. They also did it by gender. And it worked really well in a district where we are completely surrounded by public housing. A lot of our families were pivoting to their local schools, but there was a lot of movements around the district, and it worked beautifully until we got mayoral control. And Bloomberg thought, I love your choice. I don't like your controls. We're doing away with that. And what ended up happening is that we became heavily segregated. So what the CEC at the time wanted to do was to reenact or bring back what we had. We were able to partner with an expert in the field, Michael Alves, who actually created the controlled choice algorithm in Boston. And we did a couple of trips to Boston. Our plan was a little bit different, where it was 3-pronged. One of them is supporting a school. There was a renewal school. A second one was creating the first ever a family resource center, which, you know, I'm not going to take any brownie points, but it's been so popular that other districts want to do the same thing. And also create the new pilot program. Part of what we did was once we applied, the CEC then started to create some engagement around it. So they asked for every single school leader to send at least 2 parents from every school. And it was also open to whoever community wanted to go. And over a series of Saturday meetings, I think there were every other Saturday for, I want to say, a good solid year. NCEC's always provided food and childcare if needed. That way, families can come in and feel supported and not worry about meals or childcare. They engaged on what school community means to them. So basically, like even going down to granular, like what is community to you? What does community look like in your home? What does community look like in your actual neighborhood? And what would you like to see in your schools? From that, they developed a framework of what we were looking for in the spirit of, you know, School District 1 and inclusivity and diversity. And that part was incredibly successful. What a challenge is getting DOE to listen to us. So we did the legwork basically for free because, you know, I think one thing we need to keep in mind is none of us get paid for this work. We're all doing this hours away from our families. I happen to be on the Family Resource Center pilot program. So we went to Boston. We did a trip over 2 days. We visited 2 different offices. We spoke to the staff. We saw their offices. And we took bits and pieces from each one of those to create the vision of what we wanted in our district. In that respects, that was semi-successful. And we got a lot of what we needed and wanted. I think with the problem that was a struggle was trying to get DOE to get on board with our version of our plan. It's been a challenge because I think with all great things, as Camille said in her opening statement, you know, I think it's offensive that we have to be progressive in order to do what's right. And I think, you know, it's been a long time coming and we shouldn't be making excuses of why we should be doing what's right. And DOE at the time was not in the mindset of doing what's right. So this is, we're talking about 2014 at this point. We had done the work, 2014, 2015, and they were looking at us like we had 3 heads. Ultimately, what we really wanted was a new algorithm, because I think, and we can all agree here, I think what creates the anxiety and the hysteria with families is the not knowing part. So if you know well in advance where you stand according to your formula, you will make choices accordingly. And if you know that you really love this one school, but the chances of you getting in there are 30%, but if you pick a different school and you find that your chances of getting in there is 75%, you're more likely to pick those schools. Another thing that we discovered is that a lot of our families pick the same schools and don't pick enough different schools. So we wanted to pivot towards that direction of telling people to look at other schools and look at other options. So in that respects, that's been semi-successful. But ultimately, I think in order to get any of this done, we have to continue to push and engage people. As it was mentioned before, often families who have been disenfranchised historically feel like they have no voice and no one's listening to them. So once you put them in the room, I'm really impressed by your plan. I think it's going to be really successful. I know I've spoken to a number of you about sort of ideas. And I'm glad that you guys are taking the initiative to do the work, because this is what's going to take, sadly, even if it should be obvious. But I think this is all a learning experience. We're in a big conglomerate system of 1.1 million kids with, you know, at least double the amount of families and guardians. And there's a lot of opinions. And I think in order to sort of quell concerns and questions, the best way to do is bring people in the room together and talk. So I'm just grateful to be here, and thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. Thank you for everything you're doing for District 1 and citywide. Thank you, Naomi. Our next speaker is Gina Keller, who works with Superintendent Scott in the D15 office. She's the diversity coordinator. And Gina, maybe you can talk to us about how you're supporting parents and they're looking at schools and finding out what their options are.
Gina, you're on mute.
Sorry about that. Maggie, are you here? You wanted to speak about that part with the schools?
Hi, so just
Welcome, Maggie.
hi everybody. So just in terms of engaging parents and families around their options, as you all know, I know you all have heard great detail about the diversity plan that we established years back, and that's just continuing. And so part of our responsibility, and mostly our responsibility, is to ensure that parents have their choices, know what their options are, and it's all accessible to them. We are working right now on trying to establish middle school virtual middle school tours, because this is the world we live in. And the most important thing that we were trying to do is make sure we do it in a way that it is accessible to everybody. We've heard time and time again, there's a whole segment of our population that just don't have the access. They have the absolute will, they have the interest, and they just don't have the access despite everybody's best efforts. So when we have a time like this in a pandemic, one of the challenges that we have been trying, and I think trying really, really hard, thank you, Anita, to overcome, is making sure that equity is addressed on every level, especially middle school options in District 15. So those virtual, and if anybody has any ideas, we're open to them. We are trying to, the schools will be holding virtual tours. They will be recorded and put on our website as well as the school's websites, but that still doesn't help the parents who just don't have the access to the websites. So we are trying to consider all types of different ways to make sure they have the same opportunities, and we're not increasing the gap that already exists in terms of equity in education.
I also wanted to just touch on a few things that we're working on in the district. We have the Youth Equity Congress, because we're here for our students and to have their voices be heard. Prior to quarantine, we would meet with them once a month and do just that, allow them to share their voice. We have the Adult Equity Congress, which also meets once a month, and it consists of administrators, staff, parents, and guardians. We decided with virtual, we were going to bring in more voices from the community. And during Superintendent Scott's Soup with the Soup, that I hope you all had a chance to participate in this past summer, we wanted to address some of what was taking place in the world around us and make sure that we weren't just glossing over it. So we had a few guests, and one of them was Paul Forbes, who was Executive Director of Educational Equity, Anti-Bias, and Diversity, as well as we had a 35+ year New York City veteran detective speak about his experience as a Black man, as well as having this position, which is pretty much always under scrutiny. So that was, that his balance with that, or trying to balance that. In fact, during this afternoon's Equity Congress, our topic will be why representation matters. And we're going to have a guest speaker. She's going to talk about her experience as she vies to become the first Black female borough president of Brooklyn, and what that means to have a seat at the table. We're also working with My Sister's Keeper, which is a New York City Department of Education initiative to promote gender equity and empower and engage girls and young women in grades 4 through 12, including cisgender, transgender, gender expansive, and any other students who identify with the term girl or women. Their mission is to bring together diverse groups of youth and provide them with access to experiences that build confidence, strengthen community and sisterhood, celebrate greatness, and further their goals of equity and inclusion, consistent with the DOE's policy. And all interested students in grades 4 through 12 are welcome to join. So this is just a part of what we're doing, and I'm always available for questions. I'll put my email in the chat if anyone wants to speak further about it. So thank you for having us.
Thank you so much, Gina, and thank you, Maggie, for giving us all of that amazing information. Thank you for the work that you're doing. I am super excited about our next guest speaker, another CEC friend of mine and colleague. She is the president of CEC 14 here in Brooklyn, Ms. Taj Sutton. She is a veteran arts educator, author, facilitator, community organizer, and curriculum designer. She is also the program manager of Teens Take Charge and brings her love for young people advocacy and educational equity to her work. So we're really excited to have you here today, Taj. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Can I just say that Camille is killing these intros? I want Camille to do, I just want her to do my intro everywhere I go. Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. Thank you guys for coming out. I know I like to start off, I think events these days, just acknowledging everyone's capacity and what it takes to even show up to a Zoom. Everyone is busy, everyone is tired, everyone is exhausted. So I really appreciate that there are 29 folks on this call who care enough to be here. So thank you guys for that. But in the context of the CEC space, just kind of going off of some of what I've heard today, I think it's really important that our parents and our educators and our DOE staff know that, there's so much power in numbers and in local movement. And I think oftentimes in this work, we're waiting for something, right? We are waiting for permission. We are waiting for someone else to say something before we say things. So it's really beautiful to see that in District 15, there is so much action being taken at the local level, because in a lot of ways, it gives other folks the space and the permission to advance this work in their own communities. But I think on the flip side of that too, is the importance of making sure that what looks good on paper is also being actualized in ways that are safe, particularly, and safe and holistic, particularly for our most impacted community members. So what Naomi said is really resonating with me in terms of just the resistance and the pushback. I know that District 15 has experienced that. And I think folks that are not as far ahead structurally are experiencing a lot of that, especially because this summer, COVID-19 really showed our entire city, just the glaring inequity that exists, that many people, they try to act like it doesn't, or that there are reasons that things work the way that they do. And so really being able to have a conversation about the structural inequity that is baked into these systems, as opposed to making it the responsibility of individuals, to do better or to quote unquote work harder, is really at the crux of a lot of this work in terms of our interpersonal relationships and moving the work forward as individuals, as we also disrupt these structures, right? So I think that's always important, to bring to the space and acknowledge just the work that we're doing as individuals, because that's what helps the systems move forward. In District 14, for example, we have been really trying to work with our middle school principals on just reimagining admissions, right? And kind of using the pandemic as a portal for this work. And so District 15 is something great that we can point to, to advance that work. In the context of Teens Take Charge, we have actually filed a federal complaint against the Department of Education, alleging that the screenings in question are discriminatory based on the 1964 Civil Rights Act, which states that students cannot be, admitted to school based on their race, their ethnicity, their ability, their language, right? And we know that these things are what is preventing students from getting the education they are lawfully entitled to. When we think about things like technology access, language access, which a couple of my colleagues have already mentioned. So I'm grateful for you guys and the work that you are doing. I think at Teens Take Charge, something that really jumps out at me is what are the ways that we as adults can also support the work of young people, right? Because I often find that it's our young people that are on the front lines moving this work forward. So what are the ways that we as parents, as educators, as representatives of the DOE, can support the 5 R's framework that Integrate NYC put out, for example, right? What are the ways that we as communities, as CEC members, as parents, as educators can support, even let our communities know, right, that these things are happening, that there is a plan for integration that does more than move bodies. Because I think when people hear integration, they still feel like that's what we mean, right? We want to put, white children and Asian children and Latinx children and Black children, we just want to get them in the same building and boom, the work is done. But the people most impacted by this system's inequities are very clear on the fact that that is not enough. And we're also clear on the fact that that could actually be harmful for our most impacted students. And we're also clear on the fact that some of our most impacted students don't necessarily think that that is the answer, right? So what are the ways that we are fostering really holistic, really inclusive conversations that are centering the students we say we want to support? Because what's also coming out of COVID-19 is narratives that say, right, on the surface, yes, we're fighting for the most impacted students. But then when you look at the advocacy and the results of that advocacy, that is not what's happening. And so what are the ways that we as parents, as educators, as DOE employees, as superintendents, as principals, can support work on the ground at the grassroots level that's going to lend us the people power, right, to move these systems forward, right? So how do we introduce the SDAGs to our communities if they are not, if they're not familiar? How do we introduce groups like Teams Take Charge and Integrate NYC and New York Appleseed to our communities if they aren't familiar? What does it look like to maybe have a workshop and talk about the fact that screens are discriminatory in the first place, right? Because some people haven't even had that conversation yet, and they genuinely do not understand what we mean when we say screens are inherently discriminatory, right? So figuring out the entry points for our individual communities, and then being able to have all these wonderful resources that already exist to point to move the work forward. And then also just the context of COVID-19 for the folks who are really giving us pushback and are really oftentimes, quite frankly, violent in their protection of the system as it exists, right? So what are the ways that we move the work forward, stop those, the naysayers in their tracks, right? Because something I've also seen, and I'm gonna wrap up soon, I don't wanna talk too much, but I do wanna acknowledge the often violent opposition and pushback to this work. And I know that District 15 has seen and experienced that firsthand. I really want to congratulate the CEC members and the parents in this district that have fought through that opposition, have gone back and forth with those Twitter trolls, have gone to some of these meetings where things get really heated, right? And stayed the course. And I think that that's a lesson we can all learn from. And just to add a cherry on top of that, right? Really being sure that while we're doing this work, we aren't unintentionally ostracizing the folks who really benefit the most, right? Making sure that things like language access, when we have these conversations around admissions, making sure that the spaces, when we go back to in person, are accessible so that we're not speaking for or about, right? We've actually created this space where these communities feel safe and empowered to come out and say, I have an IEP, or, I'm a low-income student or parent, or, I didn't feel safe to come into this space, but now I do, right? What are the things we have to change in order to create those conditions? Because once we get to that place, the work becomes easier for all of us, right? So just really being holistic and intentional and inclusive in a way that moves beyond the performative and what looks good on paper, I think is what I'd like to leave everyone with today. And I thank you so much, and I'll post some links in the chat, and I'm just appreciative of you all. So thank you guys.
Thank you so much, Taj. Thank you for the incredible work you do every day for all of our students and for the community. Our next speaker is Naya Berg. She's the director of the Integrated Schools Project at New York Appleseed. She joined New York Appleseed after working as the education equity organizer at Erase Racism and started the Student Voices campaign. Naya has created workshops, actions, and events to educate educators and students on topics such as implicit bias, student advocacy, culturally responsive education, and suburban segregation. Naya is driven by her passion to use her voice to amplify others that are systematically not heard, and is a strong advocate for real integration and educational equity in New York City and New York State. She's also going to be talking about work at New York Appleseed and setting the stage for our film performance, Laundry City, which will be streamed at the conclusion of the session. Naya, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you so much. Hi, everybody. As she said, my name is Naya. My pronouns are she, her. I just want to shout out everyone that came before me. I'm so happy to be welcomed into the District 15 space, and then also have so many strong voices from Taj to Matt to Maddie, and all the other folks that I've gotten to work with in my time at Appleseed so far. I don't want to take up too much time, but I'll just briefly sort of, just so there's no surprises, go over sort of New York Appleseed, who we are, and some of our frameworks and approaches, and sort of what we're working on today, and then lean into how that really centers around the work with Laundry City. So very quickly, just to sort of who we are, New York Appleseed is a nonprofit organization. We advocate for integrated schools and communities in New York City and New York State. If you've heard me do my spiel, I'm always joking that New York City has given us plenty to work with. So a lot of our focus has been within New York City. And we work closely with communities and stakeholders, such as folks within District 15, among one of them, to support efforts of real integration. And we have adopted the Integrate NYC's 5R framework for real integration within our mission statement. And so when I'm talking about integrated schools, I'm talking about achieving racial, ethnic, and economic diversity and composition, appointing leadership that's representative of this diversity, facilitating relationships across people of different backgrounds and across difference when students are within that school and within that diverse environment. Practicing restorative justice, making sure that we're not criminalizing our youth, and sharing equitable access to resources and opportunities. And so that is what I mean when I'm talking about real integration. As far as New York Appleseed and our approach, I think it echoes a lot of what my fellow colleagues and advocates have said. When we're thinking about how best to support and be a resource for communities that are thinking about real integration and how to make it an implementable policy, one of the things we focus on is evidence-based advocacy. Naomi from District 1, she had really echoed how District 1 had created a foundation and a platform for a lot of work. And I think something that Appleseed is really proud of is a lot of the work that we actually did with PS 133 initially. And that school that sort of created a blueprint for the diversity and admissions program, and that now has over 100 programs within it. And so this PS 133, what grew out of that, is something that we're super proud of, and happy that it sort of set a foundation with something, especially with the DOE, who is saying no, diversity programs aren't legally permissible. You can't do that. And it's something we push back on and saying, yes, we can. And here's the evidence. And here are pro bono lawyers that are telling us that this is something that we can do. And so thinking about how that started about 8 or so years ago to where we are now, something that we've also focused on with our approach is centering the voices of those that are most marginalized. And I think this is something that you'll see that all of us have really echoed on, and ensuring that we aren't re-traumatizing the folks, that we're trying to create equitable policies and practices to uplift. And I think that is key to all of my work and the work of New York Appleseed, is ensuring that we are centering those voices when we're talking about what policies are best, and we're not enforcing integration, but integration is a choice. And it is about access and opportunity, and not sort of shoving something in someone's face and saying that this is the best option, right? We want to make sure that the community needs are being met, and we are supporting and uplifting and magnifying that community voice. And that's something that you see a lot. Again, I want to give kudos to Maddie Fox and the PAR team, as they've really also been doing that, centralizing the voices of those that are most marginalizing and centralizing community needs, while also thinking about real integration, right? And then lastly, with our approach, but definitely not least, would definitely be uplifting the student voice. I also work with Integrate NYC in really ensuring that students and the folks that are participating in this system that are within the system over 6 hours a day are the ones that we're also listening to when we're thinking about policies that are going to impact their learning and their school environment. And so we want to also ensure that we're continuing to not only bring them to the table, but ensure that we're not tokenizing their voices and that they're being heard. And you can see that reflected in policy that's created. Really quickly, just to sort of go how all of this approach has come together and sort of what we're doing right now. One of the proponents that we've been working on currently has really been eliminating the use of middle school screens, something that District 15, again, has already done so, and we've been incredibly proud, privileged, and just excited to have been part of that diversity planning process when it had happened, and hope to continue to find ways that we can best support the community in navigating reintegration, right? People are always like, oh, you know, we ended middle school screens. Is that the end? That's always the beginning of the journey. And as you saw with Anita Scott's presentation, there's so much more to ensure that reintegration is being promoted and implemented equitably within the system. So it was really nice to see that presentation as well. But we want this policy to be citywide. And so we've really been working with our fellow partners like NYU, Integrate NYC, Teens Take Charge to really think of ending the use of discriminatory admissions. The second point I think goes to what the D15 rezoning and folks who have been working on that. In 2013, New York Appleseed was really focused on elementary school segregation and figuring out what the levers of elementary school segregation were, and this beast of a hybrid system that we have in New York City between school choice and then also having residential segregation and all of this coming together to create a really complex system. And how do we unravel that and actually create anti-racist policy? And so we actually updated that brief for 2020 because we have found that within the 8 years with all of our fellow colleagues that we really chipped away at a lot of the levers of segregation, but there's still obviously more to be done. And so really, again, uplifting folks like the folks in D15 that are working on the rezoning and figure out ways that we can support thinking about controlled school choice in a way that is equitable, in a way that fosters diversity and inclusion. And also we are moving to really work towards one of the SDAG to connect everything together, one of the school diversity advisory group recommendations, which was really eliminating the use of gifted and talented programs and separating students at such a very, very young age when that has been a measure of access and opportunity rather than intellect. And we want to ensure that we are again, eliminating these levers of segregation that are impacting our students. All of that being said, I also have that we have been continuing supporting these grassroots organizations and grassroots movements. And I think that brings me to Laundry City. And one of the things that Taj said is like, how do we find and how do we support this work? And that echoes, I think, with a line from Laundry City that said that the worst part about segregation is that people start to believe something is wrong with them. And I think that's key to why I do this work. Is the worst part of segregation is that it makes students and folks believe that they are not worth it, that they are not valued. And how do we overcome that? And how do we get people into the conversation that think that this is not happening? And Laundry City was a proponent to that. So the Epic Next Theater students, again, uplifting student voice. They're an amazing group. And New York Appleseed commissioned them to really sort of explore the question that they repeat often, which is separate but equal fair? And they explored it in such a way that it was a tool that we've been able to use to really open these courageous conversations, but then Appleseed also being able to build on these courageous conversations to also have courageous policies, right? Because we can't just have the conversations, we have to have implemented policies as well. And so that really is what Laundry City is about, is exploring that. And we love that place so much that we sponsored it to become a film, and we worked with a group called Emerald Group Film. I'll drop their information because it was really great working with this man named Jordan Thomas, and created it into a film so it could be used past having the play being acted out, but people could use it in film. And it's actually a tool that students can use remotely now, and students and teachers, to sort of explore, again, this idea of separate equal fair, and also being able to define desegregation versus integration, as we know it's not the same thing, but again, a lot of those terms get convoluted. And so with that, I hope that you are all willing to stay and able to watch Laundry City, because we've always found it as a very unique and creative tool to be able to open these conversations, and also highlight the voices of, again, communities that are most marginalized, and uplifting student voice. I hope I didn't go over too much time.
No, we're good. We're good. Thank you so much. Thank you for all of your incredible work. Just ongoing inspiration in this session. We're going to have closing remarks from Karen Watts, who's the executive superintendent of one of the largest school districts in the nation. As executive superintendent of Brooklyn North, Karen oversees a district that serves over 200,000 students. She has a deep understanding of the challenges facing students today and how they can become college and career ready. Prior to her current role, Karen served as superintendent of 47 high schools in the Brooklyn North area. She began her career in 1993 as a teacher and worked her way up to executive superintendent. Yes, Watts, we are thrilled to have you offering your closing remarks, and thank you for your many years of service and dedication.
Thank you so much, Camille. I am so excited to be with all of you this afternoon. It's great. This is a wonderful series that you and the CEC 15 members have offered to the D15 community and the New York City community-wide. So I was happy that I've had the opportunity to attend over the last few weeks that this series has been going on, and I've enjoyed every session. I want to begin by, thanking you for continuing the conversation around diversity, equity, and inclusion in District 15. This supports the work that Superintendent Scott and Deputy Superintendent McGuire and the superintendent team members continue to do in these areas in District 15. As you know, District 15 has emerged as a leader among school districts in New York City, as one that supports principals, schools, students, parents, and the broader community in diversity, equity, integration, and inclusion work. And also as one that has momentum in doing this work. And of course, as was shared earlier, this has included an equity congress at the district level and equity teams inclusive of scholars at each District 15 school, in collaboration with the New York City Department of Education's Office of Equity and Access. So integration work, including PAR work that was discussed earlier and the rezoning, with the support of New York State and the receipt of a grant from New York State to continue DEI work, as well as District 15 becoming the first district to implement a diversity plan district-wide at the middle school level, are some ways that the DEI work will continue across District 15. I look forward to the continued engagement of CEC 15 in this effort to ensure that diverse schools in District 15 all have welcoming and informing learning environments, and that all scholars experience a sense of belonging as they see themselves as members of each school community, and that each scholar receives the support that they need to be successful every school year. As the executive superintendent, I will do what I can to listen to the community. And that's the reason why I attend sessions like this and I come out to all of the CEC meetings. I want to hear from our community members and then continue to work with superintendents to do as best as we can to support your efforts and to support what you would like to see happen in your districts. With that, thank you, Camille and CEC 15 members for a great series. And I will continue to share information about the series across Brooklyn North like I have done. I'm happy that you have all of the recordings available on your website. And based on your feedback from the last Brooklyn North Parents Meeting, this series is now on Parent University, so that all of New York City can now have access to this information.
Wow, that
yes.
is a big surprise. So thank you so much. I had no idea. It's very exciting. You know, you all are my inspiration. It's been my honor to volunteer my time and skills to CEC 15 and to District 15. Just an incredible and great privilege to work with so many talented people who really care about children and the future of our society. There were so many people involved in the creation and planning for this series, among them our guest speakers who were here with us today. I want to just thank again Matt Gonzalez, Superintendent Scott, who has just inspired me to learn so much about education. Anne McGrowerty, Maddie Fox, Naomi and Taj, my dear friends in CECs, Gina Keller, and Naya Berg. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here today. I want to thank our CEC members for their ongoing support. And thank you to our behind the scenes tech team of one, Saida Parker, our administrative assistant. This could not have happened without all of you coming together, fighting for what's right. The work you all do every day to support our students and our public school system is very much appreciated, and we thank you for all that you do and wish you continued success. Up next is the screening of Laundry City. If you'd like to watch this performance at another time, you can find the link on the New York Appleseed website, and I will just drop that in the chat as well. I want to thank our audience members, our families, our parents, teachers and staff, and school community members and citywide friends who joined the call today. As Karen was saying, previous episodes can be found on the CECD15.org website under the DEI tab. I just want to say once again, thank you to everybody, and stay safe and stay strong.
Theory of that white middle class. So they would then advocate for all of us to school segregation. That's systematic placement. Race and class don't make you laugh. That shit go deeper than Cardi glass. Right? Past society foundation. Back to America in the making. The original sin. Race. The original sin. Race. The original sin. Race. Just a social feeling. It controls this place. Causing fear in my pigment. Scared to look at my face. Looking down at me like I'm a disgrace. Knowing that nobody wants to admit it. But this country with my fears. Move your hands. Stop covering your ears. Open your eyes. See that shit is so embedded. That if you don't rise. 6 feet under is where you're headed. Buried alive. By lies, false hopes, false causes, false endorsement, crazy ride. This is a roller coaster, yeah, you're on it. So tell your mama not to take a football on it. So sit, relax, and enjoy the show. Cause we own it. Laundry City.
Good morning, students and faculty.
Good morning, worth for subjects.
Settle down.
But seat now.
We have much to talk about.
I'm talking, so shut up.
Please take your seats.
Did I not just say, but seat now?
Listen up.
Clean your ears out.
Soon we'll be admitting new students into our school.
The white students are coming.
Don't worry, this is a good thing.
Calm your asses down. This shit good.
Nothing will change.
Everything's changing.
This is happening because of the new rezoning going on in Brooklyn.
This is happening because white people are colonizing Brooklyn.
This will be an effective opportunity to make our school great again.
This will be an effective opportunity to snatch that white money.
We'll be getting new supplies,
We get it, shit.
new textbooks,
New shit,
new
new
lockers,
place to put your shit.
and a brand new gym that the students will be able to have and use.
Shit, we get lots of brand new shit.
We will show them our school spirit.
We will show them how white we can be.
That is all. I'm done talking.
I'm done talking.
You all hurry along to your classes now.
You, class, now out of my sight.
This is only citywide, separate or close up. 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 This is only city, let the color still bleed over.
Man, I really hate Townsend High School. That school feels like a giant trash can. And where's the flies? Doomed to buzz around in its dirty halls.
But we the flyest flies that ever flew. You know what I'm saying?
Nah, I don't know what you're saying.
I mean, yeah, okay, our school may not look great. And we may not have an auditorium or a gym or a council.
We gotta use a rubber glove full of ice as an ice pack.
Yeah, but the kids are fun and cool and pretty smart too.
You're right. You're right.
I know.
Guys, I got some news today.
Did David Jackson break up?
Did the Black Lives Matter movement overthrow the government?
No, and sadly, no. There's something way weirder though.
I swear, this is some.
They're rezoning our school.
And?
For new neighbors.
And?
White neighbors.
White.
Are you sure they're just not light-skinned Puerto Ricans?
Nope, straight male.
What are you doing in Townsend?
Those hipsters gentrifying the
Language!
I was gonna say shiitake. Okay.
But seriously, why are these white people going to a rundown school like ours? Don't they know there aren't any white people around here for miles?
That's another thing. I heard that they're doing it on purpose.
Told ya, hipsters.
Man, what's your problem with hipsters?
What's my problem? They're always trying to mix stuff up, do stuff different just for the sake of being different. Especially white hipsters. Always treating us like we're some charity case. Like we're those starving African kids in those commercials that needs 10 cents a month for some stupid clean water.
Aww.
We're right outside in the next borough. A train stop away. Right outside your door. We exist and we don't need your stupid monthly dime.
But seriously, think about it. If we get a white kid in our school, do you see any opportunities could rise from this?
Better funding.
Better teachers,
School dances.
a library,
New computers.
new
More
textbooks.
white people! Yeah, more and more white people will come. It'll be a snowstorm in Africa. Does that sound right? Why do we need white people to give this black school some well-deserved attention? Are we not good enough like the white people? Are we not worth
We're
it?
never gonna be worth it in the eyes of our government or Board of Education. Never. So might as well use what we got.
You're a racist, Abdul.
Says the one who literally wants to segregate our school.
We don't need no white savior.
What if we do?
The black race can rise independently.
We're not for bringing back Jim Crow.
What?
We got homework to do. It's already
Oh
sundown.
yeah, my mom's gonna whoop my behind.
I can't give it.
Let's just go home, guys, okay? Best friends, remember?
And now a separate but equal bedroom.
Rich.
Yo, bro.
What are you doing? Rich. What are you doing? My man's like.
Okay. You see this line? This is my side, that's your side. Got it?
What the hell are you doing?
Rezoning.
What?
This side is safe, that side is dangerous.
Are you serious? You selfish prick?
This side's too dangerous. I don't feel safe.
We roughhouse all the time. Now it's a problem?
This side's too dirty with that nasty stain in the corner.
That's from your dinner 2 weeks ago. You never bothered to clean it up.
I don't recall that. Anyway, this side has better resources.
What do you mean?
This side has a window. That side has a whole radiator. It's probably radioactive. This side has a desk, a laptop.
That's my laptop. I gave you my username and I gave you my password.
I don't recall that.
Well, I have the receipt.
Can I see it? This side has better test scores. You know what I mean.
If I knew what you meant, I wouldn't be asking you, dumbass.
See that profanity? That's so that side.
What did you mean about the test scores?
See, when I say on that side, it's two. 80. When I say on this side, it's fantastical and I do much better.
Man, if you don't get your dumbass out of my sight, I don't know what I'm gonna do with you.
See, that's disrespectful. Stay right there. I'll be right back. I'm going to get some more tea.
And that is why white people bleed Starbucks. And they sweat mayo and wear Uggs all year round.
Guys, that's incredibly racist.
Relax, they're just jokes.
Yeah, racist jokes.
Black people can't be racist like white people can.
And why is that?
We don't got the energy. You mean the power? Same difference. Black people don't have the same power white people have. We got less, so black people can't be racist.
That don't matter though. Lars, you're being a hateful drink towards people you don't even know.
I don't gotta know them. I don't wanna know them. After hearing in history class what their people did to mine, I don't want anything to do with those slave masters.
Lars, that's a little far.
But it ain't. You wanna know why?
Here we go again.
9/11. Never forget. The Holocaust. Never forget. The Titanic. Never forget. But slavery though, forget about it. It's in the past. Is it really? Black people are slaves to a white society. It ain't never gotten rid of. We're slaves to our phones and seatbelts is holding us back too.
Man, this is ridiculous. I can't be friends with some wannabe Black Panther.
Wannabe Black Panther says the one with lions on his Pumas.
What do my shoes got to do with any of this?
Fake shoes? Fake friend. You know what they say, you are what you wear.
Who even says that? Matter of fact, I got no time for this. Stop talking to me at school and stop being some prejudiced bigot.
Who you calling a pre-juiced maggot?
Guys, hello?
Oh yeah, what's the matter? Geez, don't you know how to knock? I pay the rent. I can walk into any room I want in this house. But seriously, Mommy, tell us, get your eyes sweating.
It's Abdul and Lars.
Finally, in a weird love triangle with those boys.
No, Mom, I don't like Abdul.
Did I say anything about Abdul? So, what's the matter?
They're rezoning our school, and some of the white neighborhoods near here are going to be included in our school zone.
And kids aren't happy about this?
Well, Abdul thinks it would be a good idea to have white kids in their school. That's the only way our black school can get better funding. Lawrence, on the other hand, thinks that we shouldn't need any white kids if that's the only way our black school can get funding.
And you?
Well, I don't know. I don't care. I just want my friends to be okay.
I think that's good. Stay true to who you are. Do your work at school. Be happy, and soon this will all be out of your company's.
Okay. Thanks, Mom. I'm gonna go to the park, okay?
Okay. Don't be out too late! Oh my goodness. What does this mean? What does this mean? White people moving in? Here? Of all places? We're quiet. We don't even get the news coverage whenever a little boy is shot out there. What will they bring? Higher rent? More and more white people? I'm gonna get kicked out. I can't. This is the only place I know. I grew up here, been here my whole life. Mommy and Poppy are gone. God rest their souls. So I can't even ask them for advice. How will this affect Jalen? Her school? Well, maybe the government will finally help them. Is that who takes care of the school? But it's morally wrong to use children as means to better a whole school. They're not tools, they're people. No, that's fine.
More white people means more money. Even if I get kicked out, at least Jalen will get to go to college. Come on, little banquitos, bring us some help.
And now a separate but equal homeschool.
Rich.
Poor El. What are you doing?
I'm being homeschooled? What does it look like?
Your school is over there.
What do you mean my school? This is homeschool. How can you have two schools in one home?
Rezoning, duh.
Hi, boys. This year I'll be teaching you Rich and Uncle Buck will be teaching you Pro.
You better not be late to my class.
Where is your class?
In the garage.
Why doesn't Rich have to go to school in the garage?
Don't worry. Go to skinny.
Why do I have to go through scanning? I live here.
Don't worry about it, go to skinny.
Why is that even down there?
Safety.
Take your seat, Rich.
Okay, Mom. Sit on it.
I ain't sitting on no floor.
Oh, so it looks like we got ourselves a diva, eh? Sit down!
Here's your textbook, dear.
Gee, thanks, Mom. Here.
What's this?
Don't worry about it. Ooh. Pablo don't like you. Go to skinny again.
Today we'll be learning trigonometry.
Algebra.
Uncle Buck, I've learned that for the past 3 years.
Oh, so why'd you wait 3 years? Just stop complaining now. Plus, Pablo ate all the other books 3 years ago.
Well, why didn't you order new books?
Don't worry about it! Now, what is algebra?
Lunchtime, honey. Gourmet free-range organic chicken.
Free range, those chickens can run everywhere.
Lunch. Frozen chicken nuggets. Heat them up. You got about 45 minutes.
Fresh from the factory, FDE approved.
Time's up. Physical education.
Oh, what are we doing for gym class today?
Meditation. In the closet. With Pablo.
Pablo, the closet is Pablo's home. He sleeps there.
Deal with it. I'll be back in about 45 minutes, maybe now, depending on how this game goes.
What game?
Don't worry about it.
All right, Rich. For gym class today, you'll be playing ball with Uncle Buck.
Oh, watch out, Rich. You know Uncle Buck out there hitting. I know Jimmy on the shot. Hey, out my back. Yes, our schools need integration. Nothing benefits from school segregation. Diversity is growth, and you have to be aware that separate but equal ain't never gonna be fair. If schools are integrated, then we socially advance, but we still separated. Therefore, limiting the chance for greatness to truly emerge from the nation. So how do we prevent that? Desegregation!
Let's get ice cream and watch a movie at my house, Jenna.
Or you can hang with the fun homie and come to the arcade with me.
She's way too tired and just wants to relax. Right, Jenna?
Boy, me knocking down my chair because you can't get no girl. This ain't about no stupid girl.
Oh, really? So you don't care if I tell Jenna he called us stupid?
You still close.
Boy, what happened to y'all? I'm just out tired than a jar of pickles. Did the other boy pick get in the way?
That's nasty. I told you this ain't about her. Abdul hates his own kind. He's looking for these white folks coming in.
Is this really about the Rizona Townsend? Them kids are something else.
Hey, who you calling a kid?
The one that slammed down chairs, ruining friendships, just because he doesn't like white people. What's the big deal anyway?
This proud black school doesn't need white people to get the recognition we deserve. It's racist to think we do.
You need power to be racist, correct?
Yes, sir.
And you think Abdul is racist, correct?
Yes, sir.
But Abdul doesn't have power, just like you, correct?
Yeah.
Boy, you better get your thoughts in order. It's good for black people to grow independently. But a flower needs water and sunlight to grow. So accept the help that you need before you guys are really in trouble. Now get on out of here.
Hello, Mr. Wells.
What's up, asshole? Hi, Mr. Madison. I have Mr. Nadabe here, Jalen's mother, and Miss Malabe, the mother of the two children. I think my resident here, mothers and their children are off in the hallway, and they say they had a meeting with. Do you have a meeting with them?
Oh, yes.
Yep.
I do.
Yep.
Both at the same time.
Yep.
Only send the mothers in though.
I think I hate kids.
Wait. Isn't that confusing?
Not at all.
Nah.
Okay, I'll send them in.
Lovely.
Do that shit.
Hello, Miss Malave and Miss Madave.
What's up, Miss Yum Yum and Miss Delicious?
It's nice to see you guys here today.
Looking pretty fine today.
Buenos dias, Senor Madison. Hello, Mr. Madison.
Buenos dias, Miss Malave, and good morning, Miss Madave.
My anaconda do. My anaconda do. My anaconda do want some, cause your name is Yum Yum.
I am thinking about enrolling my children here. I need to know more about the school. Do you think you can help me?
Sure.
Absolutely.
Our school is looking forward to a better future.
Our pockets are looking very deep.
Especially with the new and diverse enrollment.
Especially with the white money coming in.
Yes, I need to make sure, absolutely sure, these new kids coming here.
They will.
Don't worry about it.
Don't worry about it.
They coming.
That doesn't sound good for my kids. How it works in my homeschool is separate but equal. My kids are on different tracks. They each get separate attention and are equally empowered. And things work out. Why won't that work here? But that's not going to prepare this generation, is it, sweetheart? I disagree, Mr. Madison. What do you think?
I think we should focus on the resources.
I think we should focus on the white money.
Why can't we get resources here at this majority Black and Latino school?
Because of the system, man.
Because we're Black and Latino.
Ay, Dios míos, you can't help the school if you're asking kids to separate themselves by color. This ain't your laundry, sweetie. You can't just separate the white from the color. You have to embrace the real idea of integration so we can beat down segregation in our school system and soon our whole society. Mr. Madison, what do you think is right?
I don't know what's right anymore.
I thought the white money was right.
But maybe I don't have to know.
But maybe if the people could help me solve it.
Hi. Sorry. Is this thing on? I don't know how to work these things.
I'm technologically ignorant. Keep laughing, maybe you won't notice.
Good morning, students and faculty.
Hello again, worthless subjects.
So, as you may have heard, there's been some news about the rezoning of our school district to incorporate more families.
Particularly white families.
But I can assure you that they will be a great addition to our school family.
As long as they bring us money.
However, there has been much controversy passed around with many compelling arguments. So, instead of violence in our streets and halls, I decided to hold a community-wide discussion where we can all talk about this issue.
Let's have a gladiator fight with microphones and podiums.
No! Nothing will come from integration. All we need is equal education. The white kids flood our schools. That's not mixing up. That's gentrification. We need to bring up the law and demand academics we desperately need. We can't let them hold us down. We gotta rise up, demand, evolve, and succeed. Hey, Larsie, I'm so glad you can make it.
Yeah. What do you want this later night?
Are you still mad at me about going with Abdul?
I don't know. How would you feel if your best friend chose a jerk over you?
That jerk was your best friend too.
Yeah, was.
Listen, you boys gotta set this aside. I care for you both equally. I can't lose either of you guys. So I'm trying to manage you separately but equally.
So you hang out with him all day, and you only call me at night when you're feeling guilty? Sorry, it doesn't work like that.
I'm sorry, I don't know what to do.
I love you.
What?
I love you, Jalen. I really do.
Since when? Since the fight?
No, well,
We're just saying that so you could beat Abdul at something.
No,
I'm not just something you can win. I'm not a trophy. You boys are so stupid. That's probably the only reason why Abdul kissed me today, too.
He did what?
Yeah.
diss me. But guess what? It doesn't matter because I don't belong to anybody. I tried to integrate us in a friendship. I tried, and yet all y'all want to do is argue about some white kids who may or may not go to our school. If you really loved me, you would try to integrate the three of us. But that obviously doesn't work for you two. So I'm gonna separate y'all but be equal, like before. This time though, I'm separating myself from the both of you, and the both of you will be equally ignored by me. That's the only thing that seems to work.
Jalen!
No! Until you learn that people aren't tools, nor are they their stereotypes, I want nothing to do with you idiots. Bye.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are gathered here today to discuss a serious topic happening every day. Obama first was way back in the 50s in the case known as Brown versus Board of Hearing. But the issue still stands. We have to join together. We have to join hands with all the benefits that come with integration. Why are we still dealing with school segregation?
Good morning, students and faculty.
I don't know what to say. I've never done this before.
Welcome to the first community-wide discussion hosted by Townsend High School. It is lovely to see all of these new faces here.
There's a lot of Black people here.
The issue on the table, the rezoning of our school district.
The issue on the table, the white people are coming. The white people are coming.
First question, what is the purpose of school?
What do you think is the purpose of school?
For me, I think school is more than just about education. I think it's the first step in teaching people how to connect with each other beyond culture, beyond class, beyond race.
School should be used as a tool to be able to rise above your income if you're someone who comes from a family of low income. School should be a driver of success.
If you look at the schooling that we used to, even the fact that we're sat the way we're sat, it's production line. You sit in a classroom with tables and chairs and rows. It's a production line. You operate at the sound of a bell. The bell tells you when to get up, when to go. That's the purpose. It's preparing you to be a worker on a production line.
Why do you think segregation is still an issue in New York City?
Residential segregation is one of the reasons why there is segregation. Another is parents who have some power try to manipulate the system for the advantage of their child.
Racism, what I would call, and others describe, the original sin of America, is this real issue that no one really talks about, that has such a major impact on the whole society of the US and still continues to this day.
What is your definition of integration?
What is your definition of integration?
I'm not really sure what we mean by integration. What I see when we talk about integration is about Black and Latino kids going to white schools to become better. That's not integration. That's, in my view, assimilation.
Well, how is desegregation different than integration?
Well, I think desegregation and integration are two different things, but interdependent on each other. I think desegregation is when you break down physical barriers that keep people apart, whether it's the way you assign students to school, or neighborhood boundaries, or school district boundaries. When you break those down and create schools that are more diverse racially, I consider integration doing the hard work of valuing what each person brings to the setting, whether it's in the curriculum or the way teachers look at students, teachers react to students, apply discipline policies, decide whose culture is valid, whose knowledge is valid in those spaces, and is there still white privilege controlling who has a voice, who has a say, whose history we study? If we break those down and we think about understanding our racial history of kind of normalizing the white way of answering all these questions and thinking about that, and then knowing, seeing, being, and making it a real place where students are learning from each other. Integration is when we learn to understand each other and appreciate each other. And no one's history or story is more important than one another.
What do you think is the solution to New York City school segregation problem? I think,
Hold on, let me think about it.
We need more Black men as teachers, more Black men as school administrators, but no one is talking about why aren't they there?
there are 3 R's we need to address. 1, racial enrollment. How do you choose my school and how do I make sure I select fairly? 2, resources. How do you make sure that every single school has the same resources? 3, the last piece is relationships. Once we're all in the school building, if y'all haven't met each other yet and there's racism in the building, we will not talk to each other and learn how to work together. How do you fund teachers to help build clubs that establish relationships across racial lines?
I think where we get confused is conflating the quest for adequate educational opportunities with the quest for integration. The theory of action was if you import basically white middle-class students, they would then advocate for all the students in the school to have more social and political capital, or would essentially serve as the saviors for the Black and Latino students in the school. I think that's racist. I think that's classist. I don't believe in the savior complex, that we need to have folks swoop in to save the poor Black and Latino children. I believe that Black and Latino folks have agency and have power that has been untapped.
For me, it's not that certain communities are less powerful, it's that certain communities haven't been given the floor. How do we give them the floor? Segregation was intentional, integration has to be intentional. Segregation was forced, integration has to be forced.
What do you think is the solution?
Do you think that it is racism or segregation that causes misunderstandings between teachers and students?
People are racist and they can't just let kids go where they want to go.
I think we gotta be careful, right? Talk about racism. We can run the risk of lumping everyone into a group.
It's just where people live. There's more Black people in Townsend than down in Soho. It's just where people live. We congregate towards those we look like. It can't be helped.
I don't know.
There's a very well-known book called Why Are the Black Kids Sitting Together in the Cafeteria? And it's research that shows no matter how integrated school is, kids will form social groups around racial lines.
I think the way we think students segregate themselves is something that is imposed on them. The way teachers look at students, the way teachers react to students. It's no wonder students segregate themselves.
Do you think there needs to be some sort of revolution that needs to occur in order for our voices to be heard?
I think it needs to be a national movement.
A revolution is imminent. That's just going to happen. Trump, it's going to happen. Trump has risen the sleeping dog. The South has awakened.
I acknowledge that in history, violent uprisings have sometimes made a difference, sometimes on the side of justice and equality. I don't believe we need that in order to achieve high quality education for people of color. I shy away from calling it a revolution or even using the term radical because it alienates a lot of people who agree in principle, but people get scared when you use words like revolution and radical.
The Constitution is absolutely the problem. It was written under a lie. All men are created equal. We still haven't passed the equal rights line in the United States. It needs to be updated.
Who says the goal is integration? I think for me, the goal is about having high quality schools.
Were you born yesterday? Integrate for God's sake. The point of school is to give the learning skill to the young, so when they grow up, they can take that skill, make money, so my daughter can put us a pagar la renta.
If integration made money somehow, America would do it. Integration is not the goal. Black people don't even have equal rights. Whites have guns, but Black people aren't even allowed to get licensed. There is no equal ground.
School segregation is still a problem in New York City in 2018.
We need integration. It doesn't have to come from a revolution. It just has to come. We need our schools to be diverse. As young people, we're going to grow up in a society that's diverse, and we need to learn how to understand each other, not judge each other.
I just want to be okay. I just want to be okay. I just want to finish these last 2 years and graduate.
I feel so useless.
I think the worst part about segregation is that people start to feel like there's something wrong with them. The worst part about segregation is that young people start to feel like they're bad, they're stupid, they're troublemakers, they're not worth it. That's the worst part.
It's separate but equal fair.
It's separate but equal fair. So after every epic show, we like to have a talk back discussion with our audience members. And so a question we like to ask here at Epic is, 2 weeks from now, you're sitting in bed thinking about Laundry City. What's the one thing you'll remember the most?
For me, it's definitely the segregated bedroom, segregated homeschool. That's the image that I think will always stick with me and think about this play.
I think it's the bravery that you guys have to stand up in front of audiences and discuss a really deep and difficult topic. In general, from the beginning to end, I think it was really powerful.
I think for me, it's the last portion of the show where you all were depicting what it takes to have a conversation about a very difficult issue around, around desegregation and integration and what it means, and that it's really hard to find any kind of even common language to talk about it, and that makes this work very challenging and long.
I agree. That last part, it reminded me of a chorus line in the sense that all of a sudden it made this very abstract issue of desegregation and integration very personal, because each of you were looking at it, or your characters were looking at it from your own character's point of view. And I thought that was something that we don't often talk about, how personal the issue is.
You guys are also free to ask us any questions about the process or our opinions on the topic or anything at all.
You had a bunch of different voices in the last scene. How did you come up with your characters? Were they from interviews? Did you speak to people? Were they people you knew?
So in the process of making this show, we interviewed over 30 education professionals. And so this last scene had quotes straight from there, as well as some interjections from the characters that we wrote. And the way that we wrote the characters' portions, they would sit us down and they would say, "You're this character, how do you feel about integration? How do you feel about desegregation?" And so it was some parts improv and some parts like real quotes from real people.
Just to add on to that, like interviewing and taking those voices, because some we remembered because we had some crazy interviews. Some it was straight to the point. And using what we knew about how they felt about the situation and how they really responded, we best embodied each person to our full potential. Because some, like my character, Katie, we interviewed her on Skype, and at that time she was pregnant, so I had to, and she was laying down, so I know I wasn't laying down here, but I was ending up being a pregnant lady talking about integration. So like those are some of the challenges you have to take when you're interviewing people and then embodying those people.
Just curious if you were able to take some of the things that you learned while putting together the show into your own schools, and if so, what did that look like?
Just basically, since me, Olivia, and Jeremiah hasn't come back, been doing this for 2 years now. I guess one thing is just having a positive outlook towards the situation, not really trying to say, "Hey, white people, you guys are really bad, you give us your money," or something like that. No, we try to and not really try to discourage other races that feel really oppressed by it. We try to, because in the play we didn't really bring up us, we didn't say this is the solution, now let's enact it. We said these are many solutions, but we don't know which one is the best. So one thing is just like how we should keep staying. See, that guy's running from the solution. We should just keep staying positive and just encourage each other not to feel oppressed or nothing, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Back when you were writing this, I like coming into it out. That's why I was like I was just wanting answers, and my solution to it was a revolution. But later on, that I learned was that would cause other problems that necessarily we wouldn't want. So that's how we end up coming up with. That's how we coming up with the show being this like it's more of a question, like it's not, we don't have the solution, so we're asking people for their input, for their answers. So it's more of a search.
How did you guys come up with the idea of this play?
Oh, so we got commissioned by New York Appleseed, I believe, and they're a really fantastic company involved with other schools to like integrate and desegregate and all that. And so they commissioned us to write a play about this, and we also got a huge article from Jim, our director, to read, and it was a really long article by Nicole Hannah Jones, and it was basically about how she couldn't decide whether or not to send her child to an integrated but low-resourced school or a highly resourced school but majority white. And so from there, we just sort of brainstormed amongst ourselves about like our feelings on the topics and what they said from the interview, and just created storylines.
And when she says brainstorm, she means fight over it.
It was a lot of arguing.
Yeah, it's like you said, it's like it's a toxic topic to really discuss about. And us discussing this at this age is just like, imagine we just figured this out like 20 years after you graduated, then it would have been detrimental.
Did you go into it with certain ideas and then come out the other end with different ones?
Definitely. I feel like I came in completely saying we need to integrate and we need to desegregate and all these things, and mainly integrate. But then it's like, as you go along with the topic, it's also the fact that these already majority Black and Latino schools aren't getting this money simply because of the fact that there aren't any white kids in there. And from there, it's like, how do we get those schools as many resources as the majority white schools or the integrated schools? Because sometimes it's difficult to just integrate a whole area. It's difficult to integrate a whole like living space because it's not just the school, it's the environment around it. And so like, it sort of left me on the fence, sort of confused with everyone else, because it's like, what's the solution? Should we use people as tools, or should we just give more money to Black and Latino schools, but then you're not really advocating for a more like colorful sort of school in a sense, you know? So it's still just, it's still a blank for me, but I know that the first step we need to take is to really have these conversations with each other and to really try and fund these schools already. Personally, I feel like they should fund these schools already, so then we can move towards integration, so that whole funding stance on it isn't an issue anymore.
Right. I feel like just talking about it and bringing the topic out to people, performing this piece is a start, is something good enough for us to try and really think about it. The fact that there's a lot of options shouldn't be a burden. We should still talk about these issues. And as students, and like Dave said, like being young and being aware of this happening right now is a good thing. I feel like right now my goal is to make people more aware of it.
For me, both with the idea of like going into it with one idea and coming out, and also about bringing it back to my school, I feel like in me having a better understanding, the people around me can have a better understanding because of conversations that you held. And also like, I went into it just thinking like, you know, it was coincidental, whatever. But it was more like, it's not, but it was a systematic cycle. And I came out thinking about how it's not only that, like, it's not like a line division between whites and Black and Latinos, but it's also about like a governmental line, and also like a social line. And there's just so many different aspects, residential lines, so many different complexities to this one issue, and it's never gonna have a complete answer. And like going back to my school's in Harlem, and we have like Success Academy right above us, so we can see how the funding goes and we can juxtapose how everything works. And like I really like, I I really try my best to get like kids to bring in their school surveys. Like we are on that for our schools because that's where some of the funding goes. And also like the way we answer our surveys is how we get teachers. And if we are not getting adequate learning, educational opportunities, it also comes from the teachers. So if we get better teachers in our schools, if we have better conversations, and it's also about awareness and bringing it out and then showing it to people like you. And like you guys will also talk about how you've seen this, and then it's just like a cycle and it just creates awareness. And I think that's where it is. It's about having discussions with everyone and others, and addressing those hard topics that make people uncomfortable and stir in their seat, or also that make people agree. Like, why do you agree? But also for the people who oppose, why do you oppose? It's having those conversations about those things.
Going back to the question, when going into the writing process, actually even before the writing process, just going back into like the whole idea of segregation, I pretty much was on a I don't know bar, and even after the long article, we literally was talking about this earlier. Like the article was this so long that you see that bar in the corner. If you swipe all the way down the bar, it's like still right there. So after reading that like 3 times because I lost my place in, so I still didn't know because we had a pro with a con and a con with a pro. So, and then every solution we made had a con to it. Because even certain things that we didn't talk about, like it was brought up by an audience member. Like when we were presenting at NYU, this one guy said there was an instance where he was forced to integrate, and he had to get toured from his friends to be with white people of different race. And yes, it was diverse, how loosely that term is. Yes, it was diverse, but it wasn't natural. It wasn't the human experience of diversity. And I feel like that's what one thing when we're talking about education that people on the top doesn't consider, because we're talking about relationships, not just tests, resources. We have to deal with all. We are all human, and to put us as statistics in zeros and ones, that's just ridiculous. It's unhuman, yes.
And I also acknowledge it back in my schools, I look at the people who are around me and I understand now because of this play that's not considered diverse. Because I have so many Black and Latino kids, that's not diverse. Whereas diverse is not only having white people into our school, but it's also having different races, like wherever you come from, Native American, whatever the case may be. And it's about actually understanding what the word diversity means and how that influences how our school system works and what does that mean for people who control our schools. Because we were at a convention where there was so many districts and there was so many, it was like school decision makers were there. And it was like the function and how it just seemed was like, it was bewildering to think that those were the people who were making rules and controlling our schools. Because one of the student, they were students, but they were researching what was going on. And they said how some districts brought their principals and their people who actually has a real say in what they can do. And then there was also schools who brought school teachers. Yeah. So just understanding how that goes and how if they really want a change to be made, they would have brought principals and people who actually had a hand in changing what it was.
Right. A lot of times we go to places and perform, and some of the audience members wouldn't like what we say. The whole idea of integrating schools is just something that makes them it irks their soul for some reason, and I couldn't understand this. And what could possibly be harmful to you? Why are you doing this? It's not benefiting us, so why don't you help us?
I don't really feel like it's that they don't want to integrate or whatever. I feel like
they don't understand why they
Yes,
have to, or
comprehension.
they're just like, oh, there's a Black kid in my school and everyone's so nice to him, so why do we need to like switch people around? Why do we need to lift a finger for anyone else who won't lift a finger for us? And like, I remember there was even a few questions like this before with post-show discussions, and it's usually with students, because students are usually the most outspoken ones in our audience. But essentially, they would always ask, well, it's not like that in my neighborhood, so this isn't a real problem. And explaining to them that just because you don't see it doesn't mean it's not happening, especially if you're living in a privileged area, like in Sheepshead Bay or out in Long Island. These were 2 shows which we had with students, and they both live in very well-off places and like economically stable and all that. And I had to explain to them that essentially where this play is coming from is from inner city kids who live in inner cities, who go to inner city schools, who don't have this funding, who just don't have the same experiences, and they don't have that friendly neighbor vibe like feeling all the time. And so because of the fact that your Black and brown people aren't being mistreated, or from your point of view aren't being mistreated, it doesn't mean it's not happening elsewhere.
So I just want to thank you guys so much for being a great audience, and I want to thank the film crew. And I hope you come and see whatever shows we have next.
Thank you.
Thank you.